Hey everyone, I've recently been in Abu Dhabi in the Emirates. I've been there for a chess reason. I was playing a chess tournament. And before I went there, I was trying to educate myself about how Abu Dhabi as a city, how it looks like, what's the history and so on. So obviously I was reading about the whole population boom, like in 1980. Abu Dhabi was 54,000 people. Now officially, according to the Wikipedia sources, there is like 500,000 people in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, officially in 2018. So there was a huge growth in terms of population and in terms of development of the city. And some of the things I have read about Abu Dhabi, I'm not an expert, so it might be not true. Maybe I was somehow manipulated, but probably not. I was interested like how they developed the water system and electricity system. And what struck me was that from some of the sources I have read, they have one of the most modern water systems. And, given the placement of Abu Dhabi and the historical water system, which was mostly groundwater, it was a big revolution, you could say, like how modern it became later on. They still have some issues because the usage of water is quite high per person in Abu Dhabi. But this is like another concern. It's not it's orthogonal to the whole solution, how they came up with this quite modern way of water system. And also they have quite modern techniques of engineering, of constructing the tall buildings, the skyscrapers and so on. So it's all very impressive if you are there as a tourist. But this somehow reminded me, and some dots connected in my mind, like when I was, I'm from Poland, and when I moved from Poland to the UK, I remember I had to create an account in the bank. And already back then, which was like 15 years ago, I've had the internet access to my bank system in Poland, and it was very, obvious that we got this access, and everything was done through online transfers of money in Poland back in 2004. When I arrived to the UK and I received my first salary as a programmer, I received a check, like a piece of paper, and it was very surprising to me because we didn't have such things in Poland, at least not as I remember. And then when I had to visit my bank more and more often because of those checks, I learned that there's actually the online access to my account is like much more limited than what I'm used to in Poland. And back then, and still is, like Poland as compared to UK, you can say Poland is much, it's not as, developed country in many areas. It's just poorer country overall. And the reason why we've had in Poland a much more modern banking system than, for example, the UK, which is again surprising because of the whole London city is all about banking. But the reason is because Poland was stuck in the socialism for like 50 years, and this basically kept us frozen at the development. Like not many things were developed to whatever was considered standard in the West world. And this included the banking system. Like we had almost like no banking system, or like very centralized socialism-based banking system. So when we finally got out of socialism and we got some more free market reforms and so on, the thing that was possible was that because the banking system was almost not existing, it was easy to like rewrite it, to make it again, to create it from scratch, the whole banking system. And I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to go into politics because I'm not an expert here, but I'm pretty sure they made some mistakes. But the overall concept was that we were able to basically replace the whole system, right? And I think this is what happened in Abu Dhabi when it comes to their water system. Like when the development grew, they've had to, basically replace their current system. And here is where I'm trying to make a connection to the software world. So there is like this question very, very often about rewrites. When is a good moment to rewrite a system? And I remember when I was starting educating myself as a software engineer, it was early 2000, even like 1999. There were not many programming blogs back then. Actually, there was one programmer's blog which I knew and I was reading, and it was Joel's Polski blog. And one of the important articles, and I remember I was actually printing his blog posts on a paper because I wanted to read them. And I'm really influenced by Joel's Polski way of thinking. By the way, he was one of the people behind Trello and so on. And he's had this kind of rule that it's almost never a good idea to rewrite a system. Like it's always, it makes more sense to refactor the existing system. And in a way, you could say this has become part of what Arkency is in our DNA. We are big believers in small steps refactoring instead of rewriting the whole systems. But there were situations where I was involved at Arkency projects where we did some rewrites. So on one thing, I believed in the Joel's Polski rule, but on the other hand, I was sometimes convinced that a rewrite is a good idea at some moment. And now I think the dots connected in my mind, so I wanted to share this with you, is that you can rewrite or replace where what you've had so far was like very, very limited, and it was somehow stuck as the banking system in the Polish socialism. Then it makes sense to just throw it away and replace it, which is always risky. But in those situations, it makes sense because we have like almost not existing thing, right? And one thing is that when you have it non-existing, and one thing is that when you have it like totally stuck in development because of some limitations. Let's say there is like a technology and the previous system is written in a technology which is already abandoned, not updated, unsafe, insecure, and then rewriting it to a newer technology. For example, in our case, it was sometimes rewriting something from something to Ruby. One project I was involved in was from PHP to Ruby. Other one was some old Microsoft abandoned technology to Ruby. And that made sense because the technology was so limited that you wouldn't be able to do, I don't know, some pretty easy stuff without really a lot of effort. So that made sense to actually replace the whole system with a new thing. And it was always bothering me, like, okay, so sometimes maybe it makes sense to do a rewrite, and when it is. So probably it makes sense to do a rewrite, a replace of a system if your previous thing was like totally stuck. But for example, if you come to me with an existing Ruby project, even written by maybe really bad standards, I would probably still consider a refactoring. However, I did see one project where we've kind of we got it handed where there was like so much code was copy and pasted, the views were copy and pasted, and some small tweaks that it was very difficult to actually find the differences. So some of the areas were really, really bad, but still probably given some of the possibilities how we can parse the program and find the differences, it's still possible to rewrite it, because like rewriting from Ruby to Ruby from scratch, it's probably a difficult thing, or rewriting from Ruby to Python or from Python to Ruby probably doesn't make sense, because those technologies, they don't really bring anything vastly better. Writing from Java to Ruby probably also doesn't make sense, because there are no huge differences. Where I could consider rewrites probably nowadays is, I don't know, from Ruby and Python. If Ruby and Python didn't, for some reason, it's not true. Like, but if for some reason they were not able to be put on, I don't know, AWS Lambda, and we know that serverless might be the future. Maybe in the future we know that it might be the future with more confidence than we know now. Then might be the situation where it might be worth rewriting to whatever is supporting serverless. But usually those technologies catch up, and it's possible to do it. So I hope I made it. I made my point at least slightly clear to you, that how I connected the Polish banking system, the Abu Dhabi water system, with the concept of when to do a rewrite or when not to. Thank you for watching.